Hi there.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello, hello, hello.
Hey, okay, right to it. No, just kidding. We have, ladies and gentlemen, this is a very special episode. Well, first of all, I'm still in Gia's still in Florida, and I'm here in New York, and we got Mr. David Case all the way from New Jersey. David Case, please introduce yourself and tell the world. The world deserves to know who you are.
Oh, jeez. Uh, well, by profession, which is now retired, I was a CPA for, oh my goodness, 50 years. So that tells you a little something uh, as far as being boring. What
Never.
profession is more boring than a CPA?
That's why you're the accountant.
Exactly.
So what's the joke about it? Oh yeah, who or what is an actuary? Multiple choice question. A, a morbid mathematician. B, a place where they bury dead actors. Uh, C, someone too boring to be a notary public. Or D, someone not quite boring enough to be a CPA.
Hey.
So anyway,
Hey.
CPA. I was born and raised in Hoboken, New Jersey. I'm a graduate of Hoboken High School, class of 1968.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. So Hoboken is, well, I guess most famous for being the hometown of Frank Sinatra.
Yeah.
Um, but it's actually another claim to fame is that the first organized baseball game was played there on Elysian
Wow.
Fields. um, which on that site, several scenes in the park of on the waterfront are shot there,
Right.
where with Marlon Brando and Eva Marie Saint and Carl Malden. So it's on Elysian Fields. Anyway, there's MIT, right? Massachusetts Institute of Technology, but Hoboken also has an engineering college, Stevens Institute of Technology, very prestigious. So I guess one of the jokes we used to have is, like I went to school with people who were never going to go to MIT, and many of them couldn't spell MIT. But we had SIT, and then we started to joke about that. Actually, the college it's a pretty nice campus. It's up on a hill in Hoboken, so we used to stick the H in there. If you can figure that one out,
The H?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Stevens on the Hill Institute of Technology.
Shit.
Oh, I,
Because you're not paying us shit. That's
wait, oh, I went, I went somewhere,
Someplace else, right?
I went somewhere completely different. Wow.
And then we used to joke that we changed that. Then where'd you graduate? Where'd you go to college? The South Hoboken Institute of Technology. Good old SHIT in a way, but
Our friend Rochelle lives over there. We watched the fireworks.
oh,
Beautiful,
that's yeah.
It
beautiful.
was unbelievable. If that's not on your bucket list, everyone, please add it.
I mean, Hoboken's only a mile square, but you'd have to put your walking shoes on to
Yeah.
hit all the locations. And of course, then we'll stop by 415 Monroe Street, which is where Sinatra was born. Back in the day, when I was a youngster, my parents would not let me go down to Monroe Street. Oh, no, 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 no. That was
Is it dangerous? What was it?
well at that time. It had a reputation. Let's put it that way.
What street did you grow up on?
I grew up on Garden Street. What kept me out of trouble was there was the street. I don't want to call it gangs, but there was the street, the culture, and fortunately for me, I had an aptitude for bowling. So at that time, there were three bowling alleys in Hoboken. Now there's none. Bowling is not quite what it used to be back in the day. So that kept me off the streets a lot, which was good. And speaking of on the waterfront, you certainly know the scene, when Marlon Brando was talking to Rod Steiger, they're brothers, and they're in the back of the car, and I could have been a contender, that scene.
Yes.
And so his brother gives him the gun and says, "Here, you're going to need it." And then so Marlon Brando gets out of the car, and then the car, he tells the driver to go to 437 River Street. Anyway, so the driver doesn't go there, and he makes a quick right turn, and he goes into a garage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, the garage was underneath the bowling alley. The bowling alley was up on top, Empire Lanes. So
Okay.
that's where Empire Lanes was. So the guy who was in charge, the two guys owned the bowling alley and the garage, and one guy principally took care of the garage, and the other guy principally took care of the bowling alley. But Bill Behrens, he occasionally took over on a once in a while to take care of the bowling alley. So he had a nickname for all us bowlers. He called us ITGs, imaginary tough guys. So somewhat interesting, I guess. We're kind of related to Four Seasons, and I guess Jersey Boy #1, meaning Frank Sinatra. Would be that my grandmother, and my mother's siblings, they lived at 413 Monroe Street, next door to the Sinatras. My Aunt Helen, my mother's oldest sister, she used to babysit for little Frank. The grandmother, whom I never met, she died 1 year before I was born. Was good friends with Natalie Dolly Sinatra, Sinatra's mother. Yeah. Dolly Sinatra was a force of nature and very smart, very street smart. So what she did was she promised the Irish politicians that she would deliver the Italian vote for them, which she did. So in return, she got some favors. And one of them was that her husband, whom my father knew pretty well, became a firefighter and captain in the Hoboken Fire Department. Kind of the I guess the related story, which gets to the kind of seasons business. My mother was the youngest of 8, and my mother was Irish, and born to Irish immigrants. And so there were 4 girls and 4 boys, and she was the youngest. Knew them all except for one, Anna, and she died giving birth to her 4th child. Child and mom both died at birth. Yeah.
Sorry.
So Anna was married to a fellow, obviously, whose last name was Dilio, Dileo. And so my grandmother, who was also a force of nature, from what I understand, said, okay, well, who's going to take care of the kids? So, okay. And at that point in time, I think my mother was the only one living at home. So she said, the grandma said, Grandma Moody said, okay, come on, you and 3 kids come move in with her and my mother. So there was one boy, he was the oldest, Johnny, and then there was Margaret and Audrey. The husband was the youngest of 5 or 6. Anyway, so Grandma Moody gets a hold of this guy and says, okay, your son has died, and do you want us to bury him, or you're going to come take the body? And they said, okay, we'll be down to get the body. So they came down, and I guess 3 of his sons and the grandpa, I guess, came down, and he informs my grandmother that they'll be back in a week or 10 days to pick up the children. But she was smart. She was very street smart too. So who did she call? Dolly Sinatra.
Wow.
So Dolly says, okay. And she knew the family and she knew all the situation because they lived next door to each other. And she said, okay, come down to City Hall because again, Dolly had, she was influential. So Grandma Moody went down, met Dolly Sinatra, and at City Hall, and immediately there were guardianship papers drawn up, making Grandma Moody the official legal guardian of the three children. So when Grandpa and company came down to get the kids, Grandma Moody was waving the piece of paper, and they didn't go anywhere. Anyway, so that's the Sinatra connection.
How does youngster David Cace discover the Four Seasons?
Yes. How did you become an FSF?
FSF.
A Four Seasons fan.
Oh, I love it.
Well, sports were, as growing up, sports were my focus. Not that I was particularly good at it, except for bowling. So I really had no interest in music. You know what happened? I think it probably started in 61 or 62. The city decided that they were going to have, and I guess what would be called today, like a DJ thing, where they would actually shut the court down on a Tuesday or Wednesday night. Night meaning from 7 to 9 or something like that. And and some guy would actually play records.
Mm-hmm.
And no self-respecting imaginary tough guy, of course, would dare go over there and dance. Oh, God forbid. So we would, we'd be standing waiting for these people to be done so we could go play basketball. So anyway, this guy is playing records, and one of them happened to be Sherry.
Mm-hmm.
So that got my attention. So finally, what was it? Frankie had to be home by 11. I had to be home by 10. So at that point, so finally when they closed, they stopped playing records. We went over and we got a couple of games in, basketball games. And then, so I'd be home by 10. So at that time, Yankee games started at 8 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Not 7, not 6:30, not 6. They started at 8. The game started at 8 o'clock and I got home by 10. 7th, 8th, and 9th inning were still going to happen. So I get my little radio and listen to, the end of the game. So in between innings, 7th inning or 8th inning, whatever it was, I started moving the dial to see if I could find this strange sounding song. But as far as the music and was concerned, and so starting with the Sherry album, and so I'd play that, and that would drive my parents crazy. Sherry is one thing, but some of those cuts on the albums, well, most of the album cuts were Four Seasons version of oldies, okay, and they featured, as every album had, featuring the sound of Frankie Valli. So the high voice, and that just kind of drove my parents crazy.
Oh, and just so our audience knows, that was a tagline on each album cover.
Yep.
Featuring the sound of Frankie Valli.
Featuring the Four Seasons, featuring the sound of Frankie Valli. So being so close to the piers in Hoboken, Johnny, who worked on the piers, everybody worked on the piers, would come home for lunch once in a while, and I'd be home from, for lunch from school. Anyway, but so my mother says to Johnny, "You got to talk to him," meaning me. He's driving us crazy with this music, etc. Well, what are you talking about? And so she tells him, and so Johnny says, "Don't worry about it." He says, "I know these guys." So come Christmas time, now I'm 12 years old, so what do you buy for a 12-year-old? Anyway, so I got some clothes, and Johnny says, at this point, Johnny was married, but, Johnny says, I don't have your present. He says, I'll have it, I guess it was the next day or the day after. He says, and I'll be here to give you your present. So 2 days later, I guess it was, or 3, I forget. And so he comes and he says, "Come on, let's get in the car." All right. So I figured he was going to take me to a movie. So we get into Manhattan, then we go over this bridge, and we're going to Brooklyn. So he knew where to go, and he was going. It was kind of like driving around in Hoboken. Little streets and here and making lefts and rights and what have you. And then he finds a parking spot, and he somehow maneuvers his way into it. And we walk a couple, 3 blocks, and there's another movie theater, the Brooklyn Fox, and on the marquee, Murray the K Christmas Show, and the Four Seasons were there. So we go into this theater, and it was pretty big. It was comparable to the Stanley in Jersey City. There had to be 4,000 seats in this thing, right? So we go in there, and it was mostly teenagers, kind of, and I had a seat in two seats in a balcony, and I had never Yankee Stadium. I had never heard anything as loud as what was going on in there, and I really didn't know who these people were. The only one I think
Who were some of the other acts that were performing?
Well, the only one I knew at the time was the Peppermint Twist guy, Joey D and the Starlighters. Because that was something that was on the radio. You heard that a lot, I think headlining was Jackie Wilson all through the 60s. And I sent you some pictures. I took some pictures at a concert in Asbury Park, the Convention Center in Asbury Park, of them performing. But got to fast forward now to I guess the late 70s. So by that point in time, well, Nick, in case your listeners don't know, as far as if they've seen Jersey Boys doesn't give the proper historical leaving of the group members. Jersey Boys says Tommy DeVito leaving first, and that's historically not true. Nick Massi left first. Nick left in September of 1965. He was temporarily replaced by their arranger, Charlie Colello. Charlie's first arranging of a song for the Four Seasons was Walk Like a Man. So, and most of his income came from the season. So when the call came in that he actually, Nicky left rather abruptly. They were playing a concert in Hershey Park, Pennsylvania, and he said, "I quit," and that was it. And the call went to Charlie Colello, and Charlie came, and then they drove to Ohio, and whatever rehearsal took place, as Charlie explained, it took place in the car. So, just as far as the timeline is concerned, so for a couple of months, Charlie was the fourth season, and then Joe Long was hired, and Joe traveled with them during that period of time to get familiar with performing with them. And Joe played bass and make sure he got all the parts, and he was listening to the records and seeing how it was done live. And a quick side to that is Charlie was supposed to rehearse Joe to take over, and it never happened. They met at Teterboro Airport. This was somewhere mid-December, probably just before semester break. And Joe Long wasn't sure if it was Virginia, one of the colleges in Virginia, or West Virginia, and that's where they were going to fly to do a performance. So Joe is on the plane, and the limo comes up, and out comes Bob, and out comes Frankie, and out comes Tommy, and there's no Charlie Colello. And they get on the plane, and they tell Joe that he was going on live tonight. So Joe tells the story. It's kind of funny, and Joe he was great. He tells the story. So, after the performance, did it well enough that it was apparently flawless. he did it well enough, and so he asked Frankie after the performance, "How did I do, Frank? How did I do?" Frank says, "You could have sang a little louder." Fast forward now, so that's the very tail end of '65, beginning of '66. That group there with Joe Long, Tommy DeVito, Bob Gaudio, and Frankie Valli for 5 years, '68, '69, and 1970. And then Tommy left the group. Let's fast forward here. I mentioned that, so this has got to be now the year 77 or 78. I had a pretty responsible job. I worked for, I guess, as far as accounting firms are concerned, I guess the best well-known accounting firm today is PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Sure.
And the reason for that is that they're well known is because they actually do the tabulation of the Academy Awards. Now we go back. So we talked about brother Johnny, and we talked about sister Audrey. So let's talk about sister Margaret. So Margaret and her husband was named Tommy, and they met at one of the factories in Hoboken. That closed down, and they lost their jobs. Now, they were, so we had a husband and wife, 2-family income, and they didn't have any children. So, I mean, they had in comparison to a household where there was only one income and you had children to support, they had no children, they had 2 incomes. So, it's not that they were rich by any means, but so they would always go on vacation to Las Vegas, and they would see Sinatra and Sammy Davis and Dean Martin and Elvis and, all the big names. And so when they lost their jobs, when Standard Brands closed, they moved out to Las Vegas, and they got jobs out there. Margaret worked at the hotel, and Tommy worked at the airport. Mm-hmm. So by this point in time, I was working for Cooper's, and so I could actually afford to go on vacation to someplace other than Seaside Heights or Wildwood. So I'd go visit them in Las Vegas. I get a call from my former next door neighbor, a fellow by the name of Julius Benetti. And Julius also went to St. Peter's College, and he was teaching in the Hoboken school system. And one of the teachers there, sort of very friendly guy, apparently took him under his wing. And, he's, "Hey, kid, how you doing?" Kind of thing. "Where do you live?" Hoboken. "Oh, you're from Hoboken." Where did you live in Hoboken? What'd you do when you were a kid? "Oh, we played ball here. We did this." And then we'd go see Four Seasons concerts. So the guy tested him a little bit. This senior teacher tested him a little bit. And Julius passed all the tests, all the questions. And he says, "Well, Tommy DeVito is a friend of mine." So he gave him Tommy DeVito's phone number. Well, I think Julius had mentioned that he was going to Las Vegas with a couple of his buddies on vacation kind of thing. So Julius calls me, and he's all excited about this. But as it turned out, I was going to be in Vegas visiting my sister, Margaret, and her husband. And the last couple of days that I was there was the first couple of days that they were going to be there. So we overlapped. So we met. We had this phone number, and Julius was all excited, and he gave me, the phone number, and I called, and I knew the voice right away. It was Tommy DeVito's voice. So I told him, who we were, where we were from, and okay, I'll come meet you guys. So he came to, I was staying with my sister, but they were staying at, I think it was the Flamingo Hilton. Anyway, he came to the Hilton, and, we met with him, and it was, great. He's telling us stories. And then he says, "Oh, you guys are from Hoboken, right?" Yeah. He says, "Oh, yeah, my sister owns one of the buildings in Hoboken." And it just so happened by sort of coincidence that the storefront, she lived, above the storefront. But the storefront was a barbershop, which is the barber I used to go to.
Wow.
Anyway, it would have been funny if ever I was coming out of the barbershop or coming in and he was coming to visit his sister or not. But anyway, it never happened. But he did say that obviously he would come to Hoboken to visit his sister. Yeah. And then he said that he would always go to Fiore's to pick up the fresh mutz, the mozzarella, better known as mutz, and the Italian cold cuts. And every time he went to Hoboken. So Fiore's in Hoboken is pretty well known. The following year, I go to visit, my sister and her husband again. So I got the phone number.
Wow.
He said, "What the hell? Let me give him a call." So I told him I was coming out, and then I said to him, "Do you want anything from Fiore's?" So he says, "Yeah." He says, "Let me give you." Yeah. So he gives me this list of things. So obviously the fresh mutz. We had to get the mutz. And prosciutto, capicola, Genoa salami, had to be Genoa salami, and super sod, and I don't know, one or two other things. I did this on the morning of getting the airplane, and I stopped at the Italian bakery and got the Italian bread. And at that point in time, you could put this in a bag and put dry ice in there, and take it on the plane. So this is, I guess, 78, 79. So, so I called, I told him, what flight I was taking, and that I would be there. I think the flight left Newark Airport somewhere around 9:00. And, with the picking up of the 3 hours, it would get in about noontime in Vegas. So I said to him, when I get there, I'm going to take a cab to my sister's place because they were living in an apartment building. A couple 3 blocks off the strip, and he gave me his address, and I said, "Well, they're going to let me their car, and I'll deliver the stuff. I'll deliver the cold cuts and everything." Well, anyway, so I get off the plane in Vegas about noontime, and at that point in time, there was no, you could actually go up to the gate,
go back and forth, exactly.
Yeah. So I get off the plane, and who's waiting there? Tommy DeVito.
Oh my God.
And he says, "Come on, I got a lot of people over the house. Let's go."
Whoa. The pressure is on.
"You got luggage?" I said, "Yeah, I got a bag." He says, "Come on, we got to go. There's a lot of people here. Let's go.
The pressure is on.
Yeah. So, we went to the baggage carrier thing, and, it came out pretty quickly. We hopped in his car and we drove, was it his house or one of his buddies' houses? I forget. So anyway, we opened the door to go in there, and there had to be like 20 people.
My God.
So it was like, "Oh, yeah, it's about time." So, Tommy's wife puts out all the cold cuts and the fresh mutz out on the table and cuts them all up and everything, So, so that was probably, again, 78 or 79. And then the next year, the same thing happened. And then kind of a major event happened in my life. I mentioned the Cooper's business. I worked out of the Newark, New Jersey office. The partner in charge of the Jersey Central Power and Light account was chosen by the firm to actually do the audit of this newly created thing under the Department of Energy called the Western Area Power Administration. And he asked me if I wanted to be like the chief second in command kind of guy. From a guy, and it was the headquarters for this Western Area Power Administration was Golden, Colorado. So it was going to be staffed out of Denver, Colorado. So now I'm in Denver, and I'm traveling to Sacramento, I'm traveling to Boise, Idaho, and Las Vegas, Nevada, because what was the biggest dam?
The
Hoover Dam.
Dam.
So part of the when you traveled, the policy was that you could fly home for the weekends as long after Friday. You could fly home as long as you were back at the desk at the location Monday at 9:00. Now, if you wanted to stay at the location, what they would do is the firm would do, and of course they billed a client for this, and that was the policy, was that instead of incurring the airfare like you're talking about, they would give you the airfare as spending money. So I would stay and I'd hang out with Tommy DeVito. His brother Nick lived there, Nick DeVito.
Oh, there you go.
And every so often, Nick Massi would show up and stay for a couple of months with Tommy. So, and there was usually on the weekend, there was always something happening. And usually the guys had their guitars out and they were singing. And so I remember this one weekend after I took the staff, to the airport so they could go home for the weekend. I went to Tommy's house, and Tommy, and I rang the door. And I came in, and I was greeted by Tommy's wife Etta, and so we're talking, and I'm hearing this voice, and I said, I know that voice, and sure enough, it was Nick Massi singing. And they were singing. They did a lot of songs, but the one thing that they did was the famous Italian cowboy song, sung in Italian. So it was explained to me, but it was a lot of, there was kind of, PG-13, R-rated kind of stuff, sung in Italian. Okay. So, only being an honorary Italian, I didn't, with a degree from Italian studies from the South Hoboken Institute of Technology, not much on the Italian there, but so, and they would sing other songs, of course, and so I got friendly with Nick DeVito and Nick Massi a little bit. He became good buddies with my mother. And I can't say enough about the guy. He's down to earth, real nice fellow. Give you anything. He's portrayed in some respects not so well in the show, but I joke about the quote imaginary tough guys that they called us from the bowling alley, but we knew when a guy was a tough guy.
And he was the last non-family member to visit your mom before she passed away, right?
Yes, yeah, he, like I said, he was over the house many times, and developed a relationship with her. Called her the best Irish Italian cook that he ever knew, and he'd always ask about it, and always call every Christmas. Always. When I talked to Tommy on the phone, the conversation would last 5 minutes at the most. Okay, you talked to my mother for like 15 minutes.
You gotta treat the mother with respect.
Exactly. Yes.
So,
and now can you tell us about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction?
Sure, that was 1990.
Guys, David was there when the Four
I was
Seasons
there.
were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because David was able to be there because they did not happen in Cleveland because the building hadn't even been built yet. It wasn't built until 2009. So, and if you look on their website, they host it every year at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel. So take it away.
Well, and when the Four Seasons were inducted, he called me and told me that that he just got a notification that and he actually sent me. I have it someplace. I don't know where it is. I made a copy of it to where I guess it was like a telegram. You've been inducted as a member of the Four Seasons into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So and he got four tickets. For four. I have to call them tickets, I guess. But
guest passes.
Yeah, guess. Okay, good. So that's better. So him and his wife and his daughter and her husband. So I said, well, can I'll pay for it. I said, I'd love to go. And he says, well, yeah, the tickets, and this is 1990, so the ticket was $1,500.
Wow.
But I said I was going, so I did. So Tommy rented out a room at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel, a nice suite. And I went over there, before the ceremonies, and brought my, I rented a tuxedo, brought it along, and I guess the funny part is, I think Tommy had his tuxedo on, but Nick Massi didn't. So I'm changing my tuxedo. Who comes into the bedroom? But Nick Massi, and we're putting on our tuxedos together.
Such a special moment. Wow.
So it was a nice ceremony and everything, and But I was there for it. It was great, and there weren't formal performances.
Performances.
There were what they call jam sessions. So who's going to sing now? Who's going to that kind of thing. And except for the last song, that didn't seem to be. I mean, the other performances you could kind of tell it was off the cuff. And the band leader was what's his Letterman's guy, Paul Schaefer.
Paul Schaefer.
But the last song that seemed somewhat rehearsed. And the most appropriate song was what is it? The Spaniels or whatever. Good night, sweetheart. Good night. And Frankie was singing it. And the surprise, as on the record, good night, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go. And then there's the background. Well, who steps up to the mic to do the bass parts? Nick Massi.
Oh.
So, and Tommy and Bob were in the back, and Bob, God bless him, really wasn't much enthused about this whole thing. I don't know if he was singing in the back or not, along with all of the other, inductees and presenters and guests, prior inductees. There had to be 100 people on stage doing all of this. But the last song did seem to be rehearsed. So I will mention this. After the jam sessions were all done, all the induction ceremonies were done, and jam session was done, going back up to Tommy's room, we get on the elevator. So he says, you got, and he knew I had my camera because I had taken pictures with him and with Nick. And he says, make sure you have your camera out because Frankie says he's coming to the room. Him and Bob. Oh, this sounds good to me, They never came. So what is depicted in Jersey Boys is true.
Never made it to Tommy's party last night.
Never made it to Tommy's party. So the movie is way fakakta. That's true. Absolutely true. I can confirm that to be. Yes.
Well, the party is in honor of those who have departed, Tommy, Joe, Nick, and they're always in our hearts. They're always in our hearts. Everyone, buy your ticket for the party. It's going to be awesome.
It's going to be great.
Can't believe
it really is.
There. David, a huge salute to you.
Yes, we love you so much.
Love you guys too, man. You guys are the best.
You're the best. You're like kids to me. I'd adopt you if I could. I think we always will be, and I think that's we often have that effect on people, and we love you, David, and
we love you too.
And for your friendship and your stories, and it's just so amazing that we're all together.
Lynette loves you guys too, and the kids love you, and they can't wait to see you again live and in person.
That's it. Everyone, will see you next time.